The political crisis is one of the key aspects of the chaotic situation facing Venezuela. The polarization between the government and the opposition has triggered a prolonged political deadlock, resulting in an environment of instability and uncertainty. The political crisis in Venezuela began to intensify in the early 2000s when the late President Hugo Chavez came to power. His socialist vision and populist policies generated deep divisions within Venezuelan society. Over time, these divisions deepened as the opposition grew stronger and criticism of the government increased. The lack of dialogue and consensus among the parties involved has been one of the main obstacles to resolving the political crisis. The Venezuelan opposition accuses the government of authoritarianism, corruption, and human rights violations, while the government argues that it is being targeted by an international conspiracy to destabilize the country. The political crisis has led to mass demonstrations, protests, and violent clashes on the streets. The government's repression against protesters and the excessive use of force by security forces have been frequently denounced by human rights organizations. This situation has contributed to the deterioration of the political climate and the erosion of trust in the country's institutions. The humanitarian crisis in Venezuela is one of the most devastating consequences of the situation the country faces. The combination of political instability, economic collapse, and lack of access to basic services has resulted in an ongoing humanitarian emergency. The scarcity of food, medicine, and basic goods is one of the main characteristics of the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. The lack of local production, combined with inefficient price control policies and import restrictions, has led to empty shelves in supermarkets and a lack of access to essential products. People struggle to find adequate and nutritious food, and malnutrition has become a reality for many Venezuelans, especially children and the elderly. Furthermore, the economic crisis and uncontrollable hyperinflation have made the products available in the market unaffordable for a large portion of the population. Prices increase at an alarming rate while wages do not keep up with the pace. This results in a situation where people can no longer afford basic items such as food, medicine, and hygiene products. The humanitarian crisis also manifests in the lack of access to proper healthcare services. The shortage of medicines and essential medical equipment has severely affected the Venezuelan healthcare system. Hospitals are overwhelmed, lacking basic resources, and often unable to provide adequate care to those in need. This results in preventable suffering and death as simple health conditions become chronic and serious illnesses go untreated. The humanitarian crisis has also led to a significant increase in the number of internally displaced persons and Venezuelan migrants seeking better living conditions in other countries. Millions of Venezuelans have left their country due to lack of opportunities, lack of access to basic services, and a general environment of insecurity. This mass migration puts additional pressure on neighboring countries that are trying to cope with the arrival of a large number of Venezuelans seeking protection and assistance. The international community has responded to the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela by providing humanitarian assistance, including food, medicine, and support to healthcare services. However, the scale of the crisis renders aid efforts insufficient to meet all the needs. A coordinated and sustained approach is needed to address the humanitarian crisis, including ongoing support to aid efforts, the establishment of mechanisms to ensure equitable distribution of resources, and investment in infrastructure and local capacity to handle the crisis. The resolution of the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela is intrinsically linked to the resolution of the country's political and economic crisis. Political stabilization, economic recovery, and the restoration of the rule of law are crucial to enable the reconstruction of the healthcare system, improve access to food and basic goods, and provide essential services to the population. It is crucial for there to be a joint effort by the international community, the Venezuelan government, and internal political actors to find lasting solutions to the crisis. Furthermore, it is essential to address the human rights violations occurring in Venezuela as part of the humanitarian crisis. Reports of violence, arbitrary detentions, restrictions on freedom of expression, and other abuses are concerning and require attention and action from the international community. The protection of human rights and the establishment of a safe and stable environment are essential for the country's recovery. The endless humanitarian crisis in Venezuela demands a comprehensive response that addresses both the immediate needs of the population and the underlying structural causes. This requires a multidimensional approach involving humanitarian assistance, support for economic reconstruction, strengthening of democratic institutions, and ensuring respect for human rights. Only through joint and sustained efforts will it be possible to alleviate the suffering of the Venezuelan population and work towards a more stable and prosperous future.